Imagine coming back from a weekend trip and finding that the vehicle you love most, the one you've kept as a personal reminder of family, memory, is gone. No warning, no explanation, just an empty space where it once stood, replaced by a laminated notice full of smug official language. And the people responsible weren't even your neighbors. They weren't the city. They weren't the county. They were a homeowners association you didn't even belong to. That's exactly what happened to me. They thought they could get away with it. They thought I'd just accept it. But instead, their arrogance cost them everything. On the edge of a gated community sat my property, 2 acres of rough ground, a gravel drive, and, at the time, my old Ford F-150. Rusty to anyone else, but to me, priceless. It wasn't just a truck. It was the last project my father and I had built together before he passed. Every dent told a story. Every weld carried his fingerprints. The paint was layered with years of memories. When I pulled up that Sunday evening, expecting to see it parked right where I'd left it, all I saw was bare gravel. My chest sank, and then I saw it. A bright yellow citation on the curb, laminated, clipped, and almost smiling in its smugness. Unauthorized vehicle removed per HOA community guidelines. Unauthorized. That word seared into me. Unauthorized to whom? I wasn't part of their community. My land was separate. My driveway wasn't their driveway. But apparently, the sight of my weathered truck was too much for their curated landscape of shiny SUVs and manicured hedges. Without a word, without a courtesy call, they'd had it towed. When I called the number printed on the notice, the towing yard confirmed the worst. The HOA president himself had signed off on the order. And if I wanted my truck back, I'd need to pay $1,200. Cash. I drove home with my truck, but also with a fire burning inside me. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't even about the inconvenience. It was about the principle and about the fact that they had ricked away something that held more value than they could ever understand. That night, I walked past their clubhouse parking lot. Floodlights beamed down on neat rows of spotless vehicles. Everything in order, everything polished, everything perfect. But as I looked at that lot, a memory surfaced, a story my grandfather used to tell me. Decades ago, when the county first built out the roads in this area, the HOA had struck a temporary deal for overflow parking space. They poured asphalt, they striped the pavement, they installed lamps. But the land itself, the actual deed, had never changed hands. It was still in my family's name. My grandfather had never sold it, never signed it away. And suddenly, it all became clear. They had taken something precious from me. I was about to return the favor, on a scale they couldn't even imagine. The very next morning, I pulled the deed from my filing cabinet. The paper was yellowed with age, but the signatures were still sharp. My grandfather's handwriting, my family's legacy. Within hours, I was at the county office, filing paperwork to revoke the HOA's access. The officials confirmed what I already knew. The land had always been ours. Within weeks, the county approved it. 30 days later, the parking lot they had treated as theirs for decades officially belonged to me again. Legally, undisputedly, I didn't waste a moment. On a Friday evening, just as the last cars pulled out of the lot, I brought in a crew with posts, chain link, and fresh warning signs. By dawn, the transformation was complete. A tall fence wrapped the lot like an iron cage, every entrance sealed, every sign screaming in bright red, private property, no parking, violators towed. The next morning, chaos erupted. Residents circled endlessly, their shiny SUVs searching for a place to land. Guests arriving for tennis matches and brunches found themselves stranded on side streets. The HOA board panicked. Their overflow lot, gone overnight. Their control, slipping. For years, they had assumed that space was theirs. For years, they had taken it for granted. Now, in a single stroke, it was ripped from their grasp. And just like I had stood helpless in front of an empty driveway weeks earlier, they now stood helpless before a fence they had no power to move. They called me. They threatened me. They tried bluffing with lawyers. But the truth was unavoidable. They had been trespassing for decades. They had built on land that never belonged to them, and every day they delayed only worsened their liability. By the end of the week, their tune changed. The same president who had ordered my truck towed was now begging me for a deal. They offered money. They offered apologies. They pleaded for a lease. And in the end, they cut me a check for $10,000, nearly 10 times the ransom they'd forced me to pay. But I wasn't done. Leasing it back to them would have given them the satisfaction of control again, so I declined. Instead, I tore up the asphalt, spread fresh gravel, and turned it into my own private yard, a space for my truck, my trailer, and my projects. My land, my rules. Now, every time the board drives past, they're forced to stare at what their arrogance cost them. A truck they tried to erase from sight now sits proudly in the center of land they once believed was theirs. My father's truck, my family's legacy. A daily reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or violent. Sometimes it's quiet, legal, and permanent. And all it took was their mistake to remind me of the power of knowing what's yours and never letting it be taken away.